Ghosts, goblins, and ghouls beware, for the black cat is everywhere, stalking quietly in the shadows, counting down the moments to the witching hour with each step. A distant shriek echoes through the cool night air. Something brushes past your leg and sends a shiver up your spine. Deep in the library of this haunted hilltop house, a candle burns late this evening, for he is seeking the answers to the questions that time forgot, and telling twisted tales of terror and mystification sure to keep you awake all night. Now, the clock strikes midnight, and here is Black Cat.
Greetings, viewer. Thank you for joining me this evening. And thanks to those of you who tuned in for the live stream. It was a very enjoyable time, and I'd like to do it again in the future. And I'd also like to mention that I found out why I was having video problems, and that in the future it will most likely not be an issue. Now, for thousands of years, ghosts, spirits, spooks, specters, demons, angels, whatever you may call them, have been a part of the fabric of humanity. All around the world, in every culture, spirits play some part. Even if you don't believe in ghosts, you still have a basic understanding of what they are. A number of non-believers are often converted by seeing a spirit, however. It can be a truly amazing experience, or it can be utterly terrifying. Tonight, I've selected a book from my shelf of the supernatural, Ghosts and the Paranormal. Let's start on page 6, shall we? What are ghosts? Ghosts, as people understand them now, have many classifications, and I personally subscribe to several of these theories myself. Theory number 1, spirits are deceased humans. Most religions believe that when you die, you are either eternally rewarded or punished for eternity. But some people believe that you could get stuck in a kind of limbo in which you would wander the earth as a spirit until the end of time, or even worse, be confined to one small space forever. There is another type of spirit that fits into this category that could be called a crisis apparition. Often when a loved one passes away, they visit someone they had a strong emotional tie with to give a farewell or to pass on some important information. This appearance is usually a one-time occurrence. Theory number 2. Ghosts are visitors from other dimensions. Outside of theoretical physics, humanity doesn't have much of a grasp on what makes up other dimensions. Perhaps this knowledge will unlock the mysteries of faster-than-light space travel at some point in the future. Until then, we will have to use educated guesses when talking of other dimensions. Shadow people are commonly considered to be beings from another dimension who can cross over into ours. A multitude of questions arise when talking about shadow people. Do they know they are crossing over into our world? Can they see us? Are we doing the same thing to them without realizing it? It's not clear whether science will be able to ever answer these questions or not, but we can certainly speculate. Additionally, some people say that Bigfoot or the Loch Ness Monster are interdimensional beings. I find that very hard to believe, as they have physical bodies, and I have seen no evidence to support these claims. If you care to share, please, be eloquent in the comments below. Theory number 3. Ghosts are demons or angels. In most religions, there are spiritual beings that are good or evil, coming to Earth and interacting with humans. Perhaps these beings, consisting of light or dark energy, can take the form of humans we knew in life to comfort us as some sort of guardian angel, or demons can use a similar technique to trick us into dropping our guard. These beings of light generally seem to help humans as guardians or guides, whereas the dark energy beings are quite the opposite. These beings intend to feed off the negative energy resulting from fear and anger. Potentially, they may also want to kill you and take your soul, either for sustenance or as a trophy. Theory number 4. Residual energy left at a location. In our understanding of physics, energy cannot be created or destroyed. This goes to support the idea of residual hauntings. In such cases, it appears that there isn't so much a spirit, so to speak, but instead, it's as if a fragment of a moment in time is repeated. Sometimes this can happen frequently like clockwork, or extremely rarely, but in every instance the same moment repeats. What we call a spirit can't interact with us or our world, but instead is just like a recording being played back. Theory number 5. It's all in your mind. Most skeptics will tell you that seeing a ghost is all in your mind, that you were imagining it. But they may be right. The human mind is very complex, and there are still things about perception that we do not understand. Sometimes ghost sightings are just imagined, or can be easily explained away as the sounds of the house settling or the pipes moving. Some sightings can actually be due to one individual in a house who is creating specters or sounds from their own mental projections. This is what is commonly known as a poltergeist, a German term meaning a sort of knocking or noise-making ghost. Now, we no longer think that this is actually a ghost, but instead a type of psychokinesis.
Every homeowner knows the kinds of troubles that come with buying a new house. Getting everything squared away with the bank, making sure that the power, water, and gas are hooked up, and what day the trash goes out. But what if there was a dirty little secret your house was hiding? What if the one place you were supposed to feel safe felt like a living nightmare? It's time to look at the hows and whys of haunted houses, like this one.
Pretty much any location can be troubled with the styles of spirits listed above, although spirits generally are more prevalent in areas that experienced a lot of emotional trauma. Places like prisons, hospitals, battlefields, and the occasional home. In cases where a house is haunted by a human spirit, they may be trying to communicate with the living to tell them the story of themselves or the place that they are in. Strong negative feelings or emotions are thought to tie them to this plane of reality. In some cases, a house can be haunted by a mean human spirit, a demon, or a dark, inhuman entity. As I mentioned earlier, these beings will try to torment you. Oftentimes, the house can become infested if a Ouija board has been used incorrectly. Trying to contact the dead should only be done by trained professionals. If mistakes are made, a portal can be opened, and negative spirits can come through. In these cases, professional help should be contacted immediately. Paranormal investigators, professional mediums, and possibly a member of the clergy if an exorcism is needed to remove the darkness from the house.
Get out.
For the last time. No. Anyway, houses aren't the only thing that can be haunted. It seems that spirits can also attach themselves to objects as well. These objects could have been important to someone while they were living, or perhaps a demon might be using the vessel as a Trojan horse to get into your home and life. The objects don't have to be inanimate. There are plenty of examples of certain people being haunted by a specific spirit, no matter where they are living.
Some of the world's most haunted objects include paintings, dolls, statues, mirrors, and chairs. These are normal things that anyone could have in their home. It's not surprising that a person's spirit would attach itself to an object if they used it very frequently, especially when residual hauntings are concerned. Dark entities will use things like dolls to put you at ease so they may more easily worm their way into your life. Annabelle is a famous case where a demon pretended to be the spirit of a young girl in order to possibly possess 2 college girls. This was later made into a major motion picture. Some people collect supposedly haunted dolls, as auctions pop up frequently on eBay. If owning something like this is up your alley, I wish you happy bidding. But buyer be warned, you may be messing with things you can't comprehend.
Many people choose to hunt ghosts as a pastime or for important scientific reasons. Typically, ghosts are hunted in locations with no known activity, and they are investigated in locations with reports of ghostly happenings. If you are wanting to become a ghost hunter, it is important that you go with someone who is experienced, or, at the very least, make sure you do your research on the do's and don'ts before you go out.
When starting an investigation, it's important to get a feel of the area during the day to make sure there is nothing too dangerous that may get in the way during the investigation. Make sure to always have identification on you just in case the police come. Absolutely never go alone. If you become injured or incapacitated, it's good to have someone who can go for help. Some tools that are important to ghost hunters are digital cameras, digital voice recorders, flashlights, notebooks, a watch, video cameras, EMF detectors, motion detectors, infrared thermometers, a cell phone, and lots of batteries. Digital photo and video cameras have become invaluable assets with their ability to take lots of photos and video with no developing time. EMF detectors can read the electromagnetic field in the area. A rise in the electromagnetism may mean that a spirit is present. This is why extra batteries are a necessity. Spirit activity will often deplete batteries used in the equipment. It's important to keep a detailed log of things that happen while on a hunt or investigation. Try to mark times when non-paranormal things happen so you can disregard any false positives in your evidence.
And now, without further ado, I have selected 3 true ghost stories, and hopefully, with the information that I've provided you with this evening, you will be more prepared than the people in these stories in the event of ghostly happenings.
What binds a non-earthly soul to the physical dimension? From history and research, it seems that it generally lends to a life cut short, usually traumatic in some way, or unresolved business. There are enough allegations of emotionally charged events at the Borley Rectory, located near the Suffolk border in the eastern portion of England, to fill all of those requirements. During a séance co-held by Harry Price, a paranormal investigator who had leased the premises in the late 1930s from Reverend Lionel Foister and his wife Mary Ann, he would uncover what he felt to be one of the strongest presences at Borley Rectory. But before we reveal the results of that séance, a brief history of the house is in order. The history of the Borley Rectory begins with the building of a Gothic Benedictine monastery in the 13th century. Those were not genteel times, and legend has it that a monk and his lovely young love interest, a nun from a nearby convent, were both done in while trying to elope the establishment and start a new life together. They were captured, and the monk was hung, while his fiancée was walled up, alive, in the cold walls of her convent. 2 lovers torn apart to be isolated forever. Was it she who had been seen wafting through the garden, head bent in sorrow? Was she the girl in white who roamed the property, searching for her lost love? After its stint as a monastery, it was sold off as a residence, and a rectory was soon added in 1862 by Reverend Henry Bull and his family. Reverend Bull had become pastor of Borley Church in 1862, and despite local warnings, built the rectory on a site believed by locals to be haunted. Over the years, Bull's servants and his daughters were repeatedly unnerved by phantom rappings, unexplained footsteps, and the appearance of ghosts. Reverend Bull seemed to find these happenings wildly entertaining, and he and his son, Harry, even constructed a summer house on the property where they could enjoy after-dinner cigars and pleasurably idle away the time, waiting for an appearance of the phantom nun who roamed the property. After Reverend Bull passed on in one of the more famous of the haunted rooms, the Blue Room, his son Harry inherited the establishment and position until he himself passed on in 1927. Following Harry's footsteps was Reverend Guy Smith, who was so unnerved by the spectral sights and sounds that he left the rectory just 1 year after moving in. After Smith's hasty departure, the house was then inhabited by Reverend Lionel Foister and his wife Mary Ann. The house only seemed to be getting warmed up as their experiences grew in intensity and frequency. Without any explanation, they found themselves locked out of rooms, windows would suddenly smash, and personal items would vanish right out from under their noses. It wasn't uncommon for them to hear unnerving noises from all over the house. As time went on, these mischievous antics turned aggressive, and Mary Ann was actually accosted one evening. She was thrown off of her bed in the middle of the night and even slapped by invisible hands, of which she was helpless to do anything about. The final straw was when she was nearly made unconscious by a mattress that was held over her face. Someone obviously didn't like Mary Ann. Perhaps it was jealousy from a female ghost that caused these physical transgressions. The involvement of Harry Price came about after a paper asked him to investigate these poltergeist activities, following a popular story written by the paper. It was during his investigation that writings on the walls started to appear, usually when Mary Ann was present. The writing's ghostly owner seemed more sympathetic to Mary Ann compared to the other ghosts, as some of the messages scrawled were, "Mary Ann, please get help," and "Mary Ann, light mass prayers." Price was more of a guest at the manor until the Foisters moved out in 1935, at which point he leased the house for a full year for deeper investigation. Now that Price had the house to himself for an extended period, he ran an ad for other paranormal investigators to help him monitor and document the ghostly activities. He had to weed through some not-so-savory types, though, but he ended up working with 40 people to uncover some of the fascinating history of Borley Rectory. During a séance, an alleged spirit named Marie Larry came through and told the group that she had been a nun in France but had left her convent to marry Henry Waldegrave, the son of a wealthy family whose home had previously stood on the site of Borley Rectory. The tale turned grim when she declared that her husband had taken her life and placed her remains in the cellar. To Price, she seemed to fit the profile of the ghost that haunted Borley Rectory. One spirit, during a séance, even gave a fascinating prediction that the former nun's body would be found in the ruins. Though the spirit said that the house would burn down that night, thus revealing the location of the bones, it wasn't until 11 months later that a fire was started by the new owner, Captain W.H. Gregson, as he was unpacking library books when an oil lamp fell over and started a fire. The fire spread fast through the manor and the rectory was in shambles, later to be demolished in 1944. Since previously unattainable areas were now exposed, Price decided to excavate the cellar, where he indeed found a few small bones, which seemed to be those of a young woman. Was this the proof needed to validate the story of the betrayed nun? Regardless whom the woman was, she was given a proper religious burial and finally laid to rest. On Halloween night, 2008, my friend and I made our own Ouija board out of an old poster board I had lying around from an old school project. We went online and read instructions on how to do it. We took a small clear glass, lit a few candles, turned out the lights, and sat in the spare room of my house with our fingers placed on the glass, asking all sorts of questions, to no answer. We listened for any sign. We watched the candles to see if they would flicker, but to no avail. "Let's just stop," my friend said with a disappointed sigh. "Nothing is happening." So we put it up, only to pull it out later around 3 a.m., now November 1st. I convinced her that it had been too early and that the spirits weren't active. We asked the usual questions. Who are you? What's your name? How did you die? Our hands steady on the glass, asking for what felt like forever, and then suddenly it happened. The glass bolted across the board, and my friend let out a shriek. We kept asking questions, but it wouldn't answer. It just kept moving around in circles around the board, almost as if it was spinning at warp speed. The candles flickered like crazy, and without thinking, I grabbed up the board, crumpled it up, and threw it in the corner. We decided to call it a night, and went to sleep. About a week later, after I had discarded the Ouija board in the garbage can outside, I noticed weird things begin to happen. I was back in the spare room one night, playing on the computer, when my lamp started to flicker. I was a bit puzzled as I had just put a new bulb in, but I figured it was loose. It wasn't. I just ignored it. However, a few hours later, I began to hear snapping-like noises from the corner, one by one, as the light continued to flicker. As the months went on and the new year began, things only got stranger. Things of mine would go missing and appear in random places like a bottom drawer or in a medicine cabinet. I always had my things I needed, keys, wallet, etc., on my dresser, so the fact that they'd be in a drawer or cabinet or anywhere else for that matter just struck me as strange. I would hear scratching noises on my walls throughout the night, and I'd swear I'd seen a tall dark shadow lurking near my door, sometimes by the window. When I would tell my family this, they would completely disregard it and tell me I was losing it, or that I was just seeing things. But things only got stranger still. One night I was doing my homework. A plate fell off the wall and smashed on the floor. A few nights later, my mother came out of the bathroom with a puzzled look on her face and said to me, "Are you throwing things at me?" I felt something hitting my back over and over again. I hadn't moved from my desk. My dog suddenly was hiding in the corner every night and would randomly urinate in the middle of the room, which was very unlike her, and when I would try to call for her, she would whimper and shiver. The same incidences kept happening. Things like drawers and cupboards would be open when I would come home from school. Things still went missing, and I still have no explanation. I moved away from the house in fall of 2009, and I still think about my experiences there to this day. I am now almost 22 years old, and I still believe that I let something out from the Ouija board that night so many years ago, and it still gives me the creeps. Thankfully, I have not had any more ghostly experiences since I moved. It was a Saturday night in January, around 10 p.m., and the three of us, Sanju, AJ, and myself, had been together all day enjoying ourselves. We were at Sanju's house, passing our time by talking, playing games, and cracking jokes. AJ asked what the plan was for dinner. Sanju said he knew a place that had just opened up and had great food. Pritam's Dhaba was the place on the outskirts of the city, at least an hour drive from Sanju's place. We didn't argue much, though, and decided to go ahead. Sanju picked up the keys of his Honda Accord and we left around 11. We reached the Dhaba, ate, and were done by midnight, at which point it was time to head back home. We sat in the car. Sanju drove with me in the passenger seat, and AJ alone in the back. After about 10 minutes of driving, I realized Sanju had taken a different route. He said it would save us some time on getting back. The road was deserted, as it had only swamps around it. It was a dark, cool, moonless night, and while driving on the long stretch of road, for some reason, I was getting chills. At about 12:30, our car started to slow down, and with a few jerks, stopped in the middle of the desolated road. "What happened, Sanju?" I asked. "Wait, I'll check," he answered. Sanju opened the bonnet and started to check on the problem. I sat in the car and AJ got out of the car, saying that he wanted to pee. When Sanju finished off with the engine, he came and sat in the car. "Problem solved," he said. "Where's AJ?" "He's gone to pee," I replied. AJ returned and sat back in the car. "What took you so long, dude?" I asked. He did not respond. Sanju was wiping the grease off his hands when he asked AJ the same question, and turned back to have a look at him. Sanju turned, facing forward again, and froze for the next 10 seconds or so. I looked at Sanju and asked, "What happened? What's the matter with you?" Not getting any response from him either, I turned to look back at AJ, who was sitting right behind me, to see what the problem was. AJ just stared at us angrily with utter disgust. His nostrils flared up, his hair was a mess, but what spooked me even more was his eyes. His eyes looked like cat eyes, whereas AJ usually had very dark brown eyes and did not wear lenses at all. 5 seconds later, AJ's hands were on his neck, choking himself. He screamed in a shrill feminine voice, and his eyes rolled in the back of his head. God, that scream was horrible. It still gives me the creeps. Sanju and myself got out of the car. I opened the back door and tried to stop AJ from choking himself. That's when he pushed me with his left hand, and I fell at least 6 feet away from the car. On any normal day, it was not possible for AJ to do that to me. Sanju helped me get up. We both were in shock and scared for our friend. "What should we do?" Sanju asked. I went to the car and removed the small idol of Lord Ganesh that was kept next to the steering wheel. I gave Sanju the idol and a bottle of water. We opened the back doors again. AJ was still choking himself. I started to recite the sacred Hindu mantra, and this time held his hands firm and pulled them from his neck. Sanju, at the same time, put the Ganesh idol in his pocket and poured the water on his face. It worked. AJ started to calm down and fainted eventually. Sanju and myself were still in shock and were trying to figure out what had happened in the last 15 minutes. I signaled to Sanju that we should leave ASAP. We went to Sanju's house and carried AJ to his bedroom and sat next to him for the rest of the night. At about 7 in the morning, he woke and looked at us and asked, "What happened? How did I get here, and why are you guys awake and staring at me?" "No, nothing. You just fell asleep in the car and we brought you here," I replied with a nervous smile. Later, we dropped him off at his house and told his father about the incident. We kept a watch over him for a few days to see if anything about him had changed or not, but he seemed to be fine. His father thanked us and asked us to forget it and never discuss it again. We never discussed it with anyone, but we cannot forget the night that we almost lost our friend. Thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed my brief overview on what we know about ghosts. I wanted to give a quick thank you to Mr. Sinister for narrating my intro. Please check out his channel. There is a link in the description below. Please come back to my library next Friday at midnight for more tales to terrify. Let me know in the comments below of any topics you'd like me to cover in future videos. And join me here Sunday for 3 urban legends from Maryland. And remember, keep it creepy.